Yeah, so we do have a bit of breaking
Oh,
news. So first of all, I mean, there's a couple, but I want to get to the Tigers have made a trade with the Dodgers. It looks like a cash trade. They did get a
Eddie's Leonard. Yeah.
Leonard, a shortstop. He's the 14th ranked prospect in the Dodgers system, 22 years old. I don't know how much you know about him. I mean, this is the first time I've ever heard about him, if I'm being honest. But the
Yeah,
Tigers have made another move.
we saw him a fair amount in the Midwest League with Great Lakes, and he's a quality player. He's a legit shortstop, can hit a little bit of power. It strikes me more as a utility type. The Dodgers just removed him from their 40-man roster, so that was one of those things where I think that the Tigers worked out a trade that had basically nothing to do with the trade deadline. I mean, it did because it's the trade deadline, but that was the sort of move teams make all the time. I think the other guy that the Dodgers released, is it Brule, left-handed pitcher. Somebody else claimed him too. So I mean that adds more depth to the system, and that's one of those things where okay, that's slightly more creative, right? I'll give him that. Using cash to get a solid prospect, but he's not. I wouldn't say that one moves the needle a ton.
Yeah, I'm looking at his numbers in Double A this year, hitting 254 and 350 at bats, 85 strikeouts to 29 walks, has 11 home runs. From what I'm reading on his bio, they said, yeah, an offensive minded utility man. Doesn't look like he's going to stick at shortstop. So, I mean, kind of what you were just describing. He'll be another interesting piece for the Tigers to put down in their farm system. Yeah, and then we did have a quote from Scott Harris as well. He said, "We reached a deal he was not comfortable with." This was talking about Eduardo Rodriguez to the Dodgers. Harris says Rodriguez is comfortable in Detroit, and it's possible they work out an extension to keep him from exercising his opt out.
Yeah, I would hope that that would be um, a focus of theirs now. Really, honestly, as long as it's somewhat financially reasonable. We've talked about it before. You probably have to add 2 years, and I mean, what's he do left? 3 years, and it's like 16 million a year. It's like 49 million
Yeah,
total.
49. Yeah.
So he would probably get five in somewhere between 100 and 120 on the open market. So you'd have to figure out a way to make that work. I don't know exactly how. If you could have him opt out and then sign a new deal, I don't. Doesn't feel like the sort of move that Harris would make anyway. But who knows? Maybe they'll work something out and it won't feel so strange. But um, yeah, I'm just endlessly curious about what that deal they had in place was. Now, who were they getting?
I know.
Maybe it was Eddie's Leonard.
It might have been. I mean, I heard the Tigers were interested in their catchers, Diego uh,
Cartaya.
Cartia, yeah, and Dalton Rushing, who were two of the top three prospects.
Now
I
Cartaya has
mean,
taken a pretty huge step back this year as a prospect, but that Tigers may have believed in something that just sort of the way the development works, he goes backwards. Rushing was a guy who had a huge year last year. It is, I think, still fairly highly regarded. So that would have been a nice return for sure. Um,
yeah, I would
but
have loved Michael Bush as well. 25-year-old can play a little bit of infield, can play the outfield. I would have loved him um, to play. I mean, he could have played a role for the Tigers this year, but
yeah,
I mean, it's water under the bridge now at this point. But yeah, I mean, the Tigers do make another move. Uh, yeah, I mean, we were kind of getting into the reliever talk. Lange and Foley, I think those are guys that probably, if they were to get moved, it would probably have been in this offseason. And in terms of Cisnero, maybe he's a guy that gets moved in the offseason as well.
he's a free
Um,
agent.
oh,
So
he is.
yeah, that's why he and Shreve are both free agents. That's why it's just kind of stunning that they didn't get any bites there. I mean, they're Shreve is a left-handed. He hasn't been great left-handed reliever, but teams always looking for lefties. Um, and Cisneros seemed like a decent enough right-handed reliever. You throw him in your sixth or seventh inning for just as an option. He's not your everyday sixth or seventh inning guy, and that seems like it would have helped a contender. But who knows? Who knows what the offers were?
Yeah, I mean, he has had a rough, stretch, but still, I mean, he's a solid reliever. He has a bit of a track record. That is definitely surprising. And I mean, just trying to talk yourself into this team competing. It's just kind of hard to see that. They're 12 games under 500. I mean, they're only 6.5 out of the division, but I mean, just the thought of them getting back to 500 is just, it seems like such an uphill battle at this point. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's really hard to go on a long winning streak when your offense is this inconsistent. And again, like without three or four bad bats magically appearing, it's really hard. They haven't won more than two games in a row since early May, I think. So uh, yeah, I don't know. It's just a perplexing deadline. I do think that so Leonard was on the Dodgers 40-man roster, so the Tigers, I think, would have to make a move on their 40-man. I guess Lorenzen is gone, so they could just replace him with Leonard. I know
yeah.
that they put Wingeter on the active roster, so that makes sense.
I saw that he was going to AAA. Um, so that'll be interesting. I don't know. I mean, his ETA on MLB pipeline is 2024. I wouldn't expect to see him this year. But yeah, it looks like he'll be going to AAA for the Tigers. Um, but I mean, yeah. Oh, did you have anything else, Chris?
No, no, I keep finding ways to end up saying the same thing. That like this was just weird.
Yeah, it's kind of like you at the end of the day, you have to give it time to process it. Only time will tell. I mean, a lot of people are going to overreact. A lot of people are saying, Scott Harris. I mean, I've seen people saying that Scott Harris should be fired. I mean, only other thing I had was like not having a GM. How much does that really play a role in this?
Yeah, I don't think that matters a huge amount. I think that the GM, for all intents and purposes, that the entire front office basically does the same job. There there are certain guys who probably have focus areas, but they basically use the GM title as a means to hire somebody who was currently an assistant GM or a scouting director or something like that. Somebody they like, so that they can add another brain to the room, and that's why I don't think he's done it yet. I think they're waiting till the offseason. I think that yeah, it's hard for me to fathom that maybe like Scott Harris was struggling to do GM duties because he's working on president duties, which who knows what the difference is. But yeah, I just I don't know. I really don't have any answers for people, unfortunately, other than they just kind of screwed this one up. I think.
Yeah, and we did have a comment said from Leonard Taylor said, "I wonder what the disconnect between Harris and Eduardo Rodriguez was." I mean, there had to be a disconnect because at the end of the day, they had a trade in place. So as much as I mean, the best case scenario probably is for him to stay here long term, whether it's playing out his contract or signing a new one. You have to keep that in mind as well as like, is the relationship damaged now with the Tigers trying to trade him and it not going through?